Put your shoes on, we got a long walk home. And grab your pitchfork and your torch, it's a long dark road. And if you stay close to me, we'll make it through the night. You know the monsters come out when they see the street lights.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an all-new episode of Everyday Voices of the Paranormal Podcast. I am your host, Reverend Jamie McCaskill.
And I'm John Campbell.
And we're always just so excited to have you guys here. We are recording after getting our first ever endorsement by every coffee brand coffee, so pay attention at the end of the video because there will be an ad there. I recorded that. I hope you like it. Joining us today, guys, is the one and only Joel. He's the guy who you hear singing that beautiful song at the beginning and end of every episode. How you doing, Joel?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Great, man. Great.
Doing good.
It's just cool to finally have you here. I know, like, was the first or second episode, I brought up that song at the end, and you told me the story, of course, in an email later on where that came from. That was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool. So we definitely want to we definitely wanted to have you on here to talk about the songs.
Yeah.
Now,
well, I'm happy to talk about whatever you guys want. So, yeah, ask. I always like to quote Monty Python. Ask me your questions. I'm not afraid.
No, let's first off.
I'm interested in hearing that story, actually.
Yeah, the first thing I wanted to ask is, like, 'cause I didn't even ask you when we first met, like through that email on the page. How did you find us?
So here's the thing. Like, I'm not like a super serious, like, trying to make it as a musician kind of guy. I'm just a writer, and I enjoy the weird paranormal stuff, cryptids, and the whole kind of that whole world and community.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I feel like my songs could, like, maybe be of interest to, like, podcasters or content creators. And
right.
So I got on Facebook, and I just started, like, looking people up, and I would just kind of take a look, and I was really looking for people that were, like, startups. Like, you guys had your page up, but you hadn't even done any episodes yet. And so I thought, well, I don't know anything about you guys. I don't know you from Adam. You don't know me, but we obviously have a common interest. So
right.
I just typed a message out, and I basically, it wasn't like a copy paste thing. I did type a message almost to every person I sent it to.
Yeah.
But I probably sent a message to, like, 10 or 15 different podcasts that were, like, starting up. And I just said, hey, I'm a fellow lover of, the weird things that go bump in the night. And I write music about it, and I'd be happy to let anybody use my songs on their podcasts. It's not even really like a promotional thing necessarily, although you guys have been very kind and
mm-hmm.
promoted me a lot and are always very flattering about the songs as well. But I just kind of put it out there and said, hey, you can use these songs. You don't even have to promote me. I think I said that in yours. I was like, you can share a link if you want to. You don't even have to do that. I just think that you guys might enjoy the songs, and if you do, that's good enough for me. Even if you never even used them on the podcast, I just like for people to enjoy the stories and enjoy the songs. And so, yeah, that's really how I found you guys. Was just kind of doing a search on Facebook for startup paranormal podcasts, and you guys were kind of in the. I don't know how high up you were pretty high up in the list. And so I was like, oh, well, go with these guys. So, so you guys and a couple of others responded. You guys are the only ones so far that have decided to use the music, but
mm-hmm.
everybody's been, complimentary and, very nice.
The music's perfect.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Yeah. I think it works for the subject matter, obviously. Yeah. So,
well, my wife will tell you, man, I find myself throughout the day singing verses to some of the songs, especially Left This Place. I actually was sitting on the couch while I was getting ready to come back here in my room to set this up, and I was singing the words to "Left This Place" because that song is very catchy.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
We
that's
were
a fun
talking
one.
About one of the songs. What was that one, Jamie? Under the Bed?
Oh, it's the opening song, "Nightmare in My Closet."
Yeah,
Is that like
yeah.
about like kids being scared of what's under the bed in the closet type thing?
Sort of. So I'll preface this by saying that the song really got its name from a book that I read when I was a kid, and the book's title was "There's a Nightmare in My Closet." So look it up. You can Google it, or maybe I can send you guys a link to it later. But it was a children's book that I loved, yet it simultaneously terrified me. And it's just all about this kid whose parents are putting him to bed, and his closet door is cracked, and he can see this thing in the closet, and he's scared of it. And then when the thing kind of comes out in the light, he like shoots it with a pop gun, and the thing's actually scared of him. And so then they end up kind of becoming friends. He invites the thing to get in bed with him, and he reads a story to it, and they go to bed, and that's the end of the book. But the whole first half of the book scared me because the thing is in the shadows the whole time, and it's kind of creepy looking. And then at the end, it's this big dopey looking troll-like monster that gets in bed with him and like sucking his thumb because he's sad because he shot him with a pop gun.
I think I've actually read that one.
Thing.
Yeah, so that's where the title came from. It's kind of about kids being scared, but it's more about just the idea that I think that there's an interest that we all have in the things that kind of give us the heebie-jeebies when the lights go out, right?
Yeah.
And I wrote that song after I wrote Point Pleasant, which obviously we can circle back to that song, but after I had written that song, I go, what is it about this subject matter? What is it about this stuff that's so intriguing to me? And then I wrote that song kind of about that, and then it just kept going. Then more songs kept coming, and I would get interested in, another cryptid, and I would kind of like fixate on one cryptid at a time and just learn a whole bunch about it, and then go, okay, now I know enough about this one, I can write a song about this one too. So that's really where it all started, was really Point Pleasant and then Nightmare in My Closet. And then after Nightmare in My Closet came, it was just like, it just felt like songs kind of started happening. So yeah, there's a little bit of like influence in Nightmare in My Closet. I've had people say, oh, that's a line from Metallica. If you listen to Enter Sandman, he talks about the beast that's, in under the bed, in your closet, and in your head, right? So
Right.
It's not I know people may look at something like that and go like that's a copycat thing, but really it's like it's tribute to like the grunge and hard rock and metal stuff that influenced me, and then saying, oh, these are the reasons why I was so drawn to this. And so it's kind of a tip the hat to songs like that. And then also like the style of the song is kind of a tribute to like older bands that I was into when I was a kid, like the Ventures. And like it's kind of a melding of like grunge and like surf rock, if that makes sense. Like John, you said you're a guitar guy. If you hear like the tremolo on a Stratocaster, it makes you think of like surf music, right? And so
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is kind of what's kind of all blended together. It's a little bit of 80s metal and a little bit of 90s grunge and a little bit of 60s and 70s, surf rock and all that kind of stuff too.
Nice.
And just kind of letting all of my influences that my dad and my brother kind of gave to me, I'm letting all of that different music inform the way that I write. So it kind of comes out as a mixture of things, So
Not paranormal related, but how long have you like been playing guitar, writing songs and whatnot?
I started playing bass guitar when I was 12, because I got kicked out of school bands. Because I skipped practice one day because all the kids that didn't participate in school bands, got to stay like in like a study hall and just play like card games. And I was like, I want to like stay and play card games today. And so I like told them that I didn't feel very good. And so then I got to stay. Well, then the band director came to the class and I was like playing cards and he was like pulled me in the hallway and screamed at me. And it was hilarious. You know, it's like, who cares for a 12-year-old kid? Like, people were so serious about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, after that happened, I was like, well, I guess I'm not like a school band or a marching band kid, even though those were like my people. I was friends with all of those people, but I've just decided I was going to play music on my own. My brother was in a band, and so he had a bass guitar, and I just started plucking around on it. And then I got an acoustic guitar when I was 13 or 14, and started teaching myself. You know, back then we didn't have YouTube, so everything was like I would look up tablature like on just the most horrible Angel Fire websites, and you know, I don't know if you remember all that stuff.
Oh,
or like
yeah.
tripod.com, like all of the, you know, 50 character long URLs that you had to have back then if you wanted to have your own website. And
Right.
so I started teaching myself how to play songs I liked. And I think my motivation early on was pretty well, like I wanted people to like me, and I wanted girls to like me. So I thought, oh, if I write songs, girls will like me. And so then I started like a little punk trio when I was 15 with a couple of buddies. And yeah, we mostly wrote love songs kind of stuff, and you know, just cheesy pop punk. And but I still am friends with those guys. And in fact, the drummer from that band and I are scheming to maybe re-record some of the very first recordings we ever did together.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm 39 now, so I've been playing. That was like my first band started when I was 15. So 24 years I've been playing in bands.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and the guys that I currently play with, I've been playing with since my early 20s. So we, you know, once we were not teenagers trying to get girls anymore because we all became married and had kids, the band kind of just locked in and kind of stayed the same group of guys for a long time. And it was different variations of things. We played my brother-in-law, who actually plays in my band. He was a singer-songwriter. So all of us as musicians played as his band. And then we played at church and stuff like that too. And it was just always the same group of 4 or 5 guys. And so when I wrote this EP, all these paranormal songs a few years ago, of course, those were the go-to guys that were going to be my band. And, you know, so that's kind of how it all happened. And then we thought, when I first recorded the EP, we played together. We played one show, and then we didn't do anything after that. And then in 2019, I got asked to play another show, and so I got the guys back together, and it was a really good show. It was like November 2019, and I was like, man, that was a lot of fun. You know what we should do? We should we should start doing shows more often. I said 2020 is going to be our year, and then, well, you know what happened?
Yeah.
So we took a 3-year hiatus, and then at the beginning of this year, I said, okay, I'm gonna do this again, and it's really just for me and for us as a group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, the same group of guys that I would go play, you know, pool with, or go bowling with, or just go get buffalo wings with, you know, and so we were like, hey, we do that kind of thing once a month anyway. Why don't we just play a show instead? And we're still hanging out together. We're just doing like our favorite thing together.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody was in on it, and the rest is history, man. It's been a pretty good, 2023 has been a fun year. And the whole music scene, not just us, it seems like everybody kind of came out of the woodwork again this year. You know, concerts are back, people are going to things, and you know, for a couple of years, we were like, I guess live music may never be a thing again, you know, like
Yeah.
Nobody knew how all of that was going to play out, and, outside of doing like underground shows in people's basements or whatever, it's like, okay, I guess concert venues are never going to be a thing again. And, but then seemed like towards the end of 22 and then into this year, everybody's kind of come back in full force.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's been really cool. It's, there's a lot of camaraderie among musicians, and I find myself being somewhat unique among bands because nobody's kind of taking the thematic approach that I take, in terms of the paranormal stuff. And so it's kind of been a fun gimmick for me. Not that it's entirely a gimmick. I'm writing about it because I'm interested in it.
Exactly.
It's what I like. It just happens to work as a gimmick because nobody else is doing that because, at least locally, I know there's a ton of other, actually my wife just sent me a song the other day. These two girls wrote about Roswell. That was fantastic. Awesome folk song. It basically tells the whole story starting from like 1947 before the Roswell crash. And then kind of goes into like the whole story of the cover up. And it's a really cool folk song. So there are definitely artists out there doing what I'm doing, just not locally to me, And so I kind of have that kind of like niche where I am locally in Illinois. It's fun.
If you get a chance, man, you ought to send that link to me. Maybe we can share their stuff over here on the Facebook page too.
Yeah. I'd love to.
Because it is very rare to come across groups that have that paranormal theme. A long time ago, I forget the name of the group, and I'm not being mean when I say I can't remember. It's been like so long ago. There was a group here in Ohio, and their song, according to them, the basis of all their songs was paranormal. But when you listen, like with yours, you can feel it, you can hear it. It's prevalent. Theirs was like that introduced the song. Oh, this one's about a ghost who fell in love, and then they're screaming and yelling, and I can't make out a thing they're saying.
Yeah.
But they were all over Facebook for quite a while.
Yeah, you tend to find some of these like kind of darker, the paranormal themes, ghosts, demons, that kind of stuff. You do find a lot of that like heavy music for sure, like metal and like the hardcore stuff, screamo and all that. But yeah, it's, sometimes it's hard for like the everyday listener to track with that stuff. I really love heavy music, so I would probably love that. But I'm a lover of all music, but what comes out of me is pretty easy to listen to, and so, it's a fun genre to be in. The thing is, like, I write about the paranormal stuff, but it's almost the opposite of that. You're saying that they're writing songs about like a ghost being in love, but then the way that it's written almost doesn't come across as paranormal. Like, if you know what it's about, then okay, that's what that's about. And mine's the opposite. My songs are like overtly paranormal, but really they're about like the human experience.
Right.
And so, that's kind of I was saying that about Nightmare in My Closet a little while ago, it's really, it's about paranormal stuff, but it's really about us as humans that like, when it's dark outside and we're alone, there's like a primal thing that happens to all of us that kind of makes the hair on our neck stand up.
Yeah.
And whether or not we could debate about the literalness and the reality of whether or not any of these things actually exist. But there's a primal animal instinct in all of us that like our spidey sense starts tingling when the lights go off. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And so that's kind of what that's about. And then I would love to share more of that allegory about some of the other songs, whichever ones you want to hear about.
Yeah. I know John did want to hear, but what was the one you said you wanted to hear about, John?
Well, I actually had another question. I was wondering, have you ever done like paranormal investigations and whatnot?
No, not officially. I have a couple of encounter stories that happened to me in my 20s and early 30s that I just can't really explain them. That's actually, that's a lyric in I Left This Place whenever I say I've seen things that I cannot explain. Like, that's true of me. even though that song isn't really about me. I've had a couple of different encounters that were rather frightening, that I didn't really know what to do with. You know, you try to use logic and reason things away, and it's really hard to do that with these couple of things. One was a house. I played in a band in my early 20s. I lived in Virginia, in Chesapeake, and the house that we played in was owned by a church, and it was like on plantation land, but it was not a plantation house. This house is probably 100 years old, maybe. And we would just always hear weird stuff, like kitchen cabinets opening and closing, like typical, like what people would say is like a mischievous poltergeist kind of activity stuff. And I was always quick to dismiss it and be like, dude, we're like freaking jamming in the living room and like rattling the house. Of course we're hearing stuff shake. And so I would always just try to like justify things away. And then one evening I saw one of the guys walk into another room, and I asked him to help me grab a piece of gear. And whenever I asked him to help me, one of the other guys in the band told me that Aaron left 15 minutes ago. Ooh. And I was like, then who just walked into that room? And so we kind of both walked over to the door together. The door was closed, which I never heard the door open or close. I just saw him walk into the room, but I couldn't see the door opening from where I was at. And so the door was closed. We opened the door, the lights are off, and no one was in there. And it sure could have been a trick, like my eyes were playing on me, but I could have sworn I saw him like full figure walk into that room, and then there was no one in there. So that was kind of the first like creepy thing that I saw. And then the last day that I was ever in that house, we were getting ready to go on like 3 weeks of tour, and we had a trailer in the driveway, and the driveway goes in a circle around the back of the house, and there's a kitchen door on the back of the house that was wide open to the kitchen. And again, that's where we heard most of the activity. But that door was open, and it was a completely still day. There's no wind. There was no other door in the house open, no window open. So like a suction effect doesn't make any sense. But we had loaded all of our stuff into the trailer, and we're getting ready to close that door, and everybody was in the driveway. So like, I think it was like 9 or 10 people witnessed this. We were all standing in the driveway, and we said, all right, let's go back in and do a dummy check, make sure we've got everything. And when we turned to walk into the house, that kitchen door slammed shut so hard. I don't know how the glass didn't break out of it. And we all just kind of looked at each other and were like, okay, I think we got everything. Anybody want to go do the check? And everyone was like, nope, I'm good. So we just locked the door from the outside, and I never went back in that house again after that. That was the tour after that. House? Yeah, it was both the same house. Yeah. And after that tour was over, the band split. So I ended up coming back to Illinois. So yeah, I never went back. I never went back in it. I've never seen it since, actually.
Wow.
So one of these days, maybe I'll drive out to Chesapeake. Maybe whenever I come through Ohio and see you guys in person, or go to the Mothman Festival next year or something.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go back to that house and sit in the yard and write a song or something. I don't know.
Oh, that is so cool.
So the other one that I had was probably, I kind of struggle with this one, because I know, Jamie, I know that you're part of like the Exorcist group, and you guys do a lot of Order of an Exorcist. Yeah. And I go back and forth on the demon stuff, man, because I grew up Christian, going to church. I still think Christ holds all things together, but I struggle with some of the things that I think maybe are not literal in scripture. But I've seen stuff, you know what I mean? So right. I had the other encounter that I had was really weird, was in this was several years ago. I was actually working part-time for a church as a worship leader.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was working part-time, I had a full-time job. It was hard for me to make time to get in and get stuff done. My wife and kids went out of town for the weekend, and when they went out of town, I was like, oh, I'm home alone on a Friday night. I'll go over to the church and get some stuff done. And so I was there real late. It was probably close to, it was after midnight, because I know that Elise was in Kentucky,
mm-hmm.
and we were at different time zones, which makes it even more interesting, right?
Right.
She called me right after this happened. I'm putting the cart in front of the horse. So I'm up in the balcony of this church, messing around with soundboard, getting stuff on the computer done, and blah, blah, blah. And I just start feeling weird, like creeped out. No reason. The building's not really making any unusual noise or anything. I'm just like, I think it's time to go home. I don't feel like, something feels weird. And so I walk down out of the balcony, and it's hard to describe without seeing it, but when you're in the main lobby of the church, it's all glass doors out to the back parking lot. So when you come down the stairs, you're looking at a wall of glass doors when you're walking out. And so as I'm walking towards the door, and all the doors are locked, the center doors have crash bars on them, so you can push to go out, and then the door locks behind you, right? So I'm walking towards the door, and I see this figure. I can't explain it. I don't know how else to say it, but it wasn't my shadow, because it wasn't moving with me. It was moving in a different direction. And I just see this thing kind of cross behind me. There are no car. The other thing, just like, I've tried to play this back in my head and go, how can I explain that thing that I saw? It would make sense if like a car drove by and like
mm-hmm.
a second shadow is created by my body and like scans across. You know how like when a car goes by and you get the light and multiple shadows will like kind of go across the room as the car passes.
Oh yeah, like it looks
Right.
like, it almost looks like something's running sometimes. Yeah.
Right. And so like I thought like that kind of light refraction would account for what I saw, but there wasn't anything like that. The parking lot street lamps weren't even on at the time. And so I see this thing, and I don't look back. I just walk straight out. I push the crash bar open, and I go get straight in my van. And when I look back at the building just felt like super dark. Like I've heard people talk about on Paranormal podcasts and other shows and stuff before, like when they're around like the theory. Have you guys heard of like people talk about like theory eaters, like the dog man, or like the black-eyed children?
Oh
like,
yeah, we talked about them
that,
on Nightmares.
Yeah, and so people think that like it's possible that these are like energy forces that like actually feed on fear.
Mm-hmm.
And when you encounter those things, there's like this inky blackness that kind of like surrounds it. Like the area that the thing is in, it's not just shadows, it's almost like void, right? Like it's so black you can't see into it, kind of thing. And so that's kind of what the building felt like. It was like the shadows around the building were just kind of like getting darker as I was looking. It was so freaking bizarre. Like I said, I don't know how to explain it other than I saw what I saw. And I don't even chalk all this thing up to like it's definitely demons or definitely cryptid or paranormal. It could just be me. I could have been tired. You know what I mean?
There's so many explanations.
I try to take a skeptical approach, but I saw this thing. I get in my car. I'm watching this dark building in front of me, and then my phone rings, and it's my wife. I answer the phone, and I say, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm okay. And she goes, "Well, I just had a really bad dream that something was like trying to harm you, like,
Wow.
and like really bad." And I was like, I am getting the hell out of here. So that was a pretty intense one. So no, I've not ever done paranormal investigating, but I definitely have these kind of two really palpable, I don't know what to do with them experiences that happened in my life that do kind of inform the way that I think about these things, right? I'm still pretty skeptical, but I can't dismiss those things. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, those are kind of wild stories. And around that time, after that church thing happened, that would have been close to like 2012, 2013. That's when I started writing stuff down. That's when these songs kind of started being born. And because it was a fascination, you know, I was really intrigued by the Mothman, particularly. That was kind of how Point Pleasant came around.
Yeah, I was getting ready to ask about that one. Yeah.
So hopefully that answers your question, John. I know you were asking if I'd done paranormal investigating. That's about as close as I get on that. Aside from like when I was a teenager and we would go out to like, you know, there were these, I think every town has them. Teenagers say, "Oh, this spot's haunted," or whatever, and you go out and get out of your car and do the baby powder on the bumper and all that stuff. And
yep,
you know, we all know how those tricks actually work, and there's nothing to it, you know, that kind of stuff. And so, you know, I would fool around with that kind of stuff. But I remember seeing the Mothman prophecies in 2002. I was a junior in high school. And I was really intrigued by that story. But, you know, in the movie, they say this is based on true events.
Yeah.
And prior to seeing that movie, I had never heard of it. In fact, the only cryptid stuff that I was really aware of before that would have been like, I watched X-Files a little bit when I was a kid, like on Friday nights on Fox, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't realize that there was this like whole like folklore community out there of people that are like really into this stuff, right? And so I remember in the movie it said that it was based on true events, and so I made the assumption that the true events were the disasters, like the plane crash, the bridge collapse, like all of the things that are actually in that movie that are like historically documented events that took place.
Right.
So I thought the story of the Mothman in that movie was made up for the movie. I didn't realize it was this actual series of events that happened in 66 and 67, right? Like, I just thought it was a story made up for a movie that was based around these disasters that happened. And so I never thought much of it. And then I started reading about it, and I'm going, oh, this is actually like, this is a real story. And it kind of started to feel like my thing, where it's like, I saw this tall, dark thing. And that's the Mothman, is this tall, dark thing with red eyes and huge, you know, it's like 7 to 10 feet tall and all this. And it's just captured my imagination. And I really kind of fell in love with that folklore. And so I read all about it. And then I ended up writing this song. And really I don't even know how many people I've explained the title of the EP, Diversions, but it came out of the Mothman song, because it's like this thing where it's like, if something can like shift my belief, right, and like make me wonder if like my reality is what I think it is, then that could like really rock like my faith. It can really alter my consciousness, all of these things. And so that's really what Point Pleasant, that song, is about. It tells the whole story kind of like it's a folk song at its core. You know, I mean, I know that we're a band and we're a little heavier than folk music, but I kind of refer to our stuff as like indie alternative folk, because all of it's all folk songs. Even though it's like grunge, you know, our style's kind of grungy, something between, you know, Sonic Youth and REM and, you know, country alt rock or whatever. But that story, just was really intriguing. So that's the song was basically just me laying out the whole story, like start to finish. And then I started kind of going, okay, like I have this idea that I'm putting in this, that is, what if these things really aren't real, right? Or what if they are real, then what does that mean about the things that I believe now, right? Like, how does that shift the way that I think? And so the last line in the song is 46 with Christmas presents fell to their death wondering if Jesus is the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this little town of probably pretty faithful churchgoers and people that probably hadn't ever really thought much about UFOs or whatever, all of a sudden hundreds of people are seeing this thing, and it really turns this town like upside down within a matter of months.
Oh yeah.
And people are questioning, what do I even believe anymore? Because I've seen this thing, you know, and call it mass hallucination or whatever you want to call it. You know, I used to hold a little bit of different views about it that I don't, which were somewhere along the lines of, you know, something really evil manifesting in order to like lead me astray. But I don't really find that to be true, because as I've leaned into these things, I've actually found myself more connected to God than I was before. And so, yeah, so that was kind of the idea with Point Pleasant. It's this tension of like, this story is really cool, but also is this story like leading me down a dark path? Like, am I like becoming obsessed with a thing that's just going to like totally mess up my life? Which, if you listen to John Keel's story, the guy who reported on the Mothman and basically documented everything, like that dude lost family and friends and all of this stuff because he was so freaking obsessed with the thing, right?
Oh yeah.
And so that's kind of the idea, is like, you know, this is a really cool story, but also like maybe we ought to just like pump the brakes a hair and put it, like frame it the way it needs to be framed, which is, we're all just having fun and using our imagination. Mm-hmm. And things in the dark scare us. And that's kind of fun. And there's not like anything wrong or necessarily evil about that, to have fun being scared of the dark. Right. But we can really get carried away with it and turn it into this thing that's like our obsession if we're not careful.
Yeah. That's, and John will tell you like, cause I kind of taught John a lot about the paranormal when he first came in. As I always tell people, you know, you get too far into it. I had a case once, and I'm not going to talk too much about it, but the guy like wound up losing his family, his friends. He pulled himself away from everybody, and he wound up like eating a bullet. It's man. Yeah, that can happen. You know, you get so into it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah. So yes.
So what is your band's name, and how would anyone look them up?
Well, the band is just Joel. Like, and it's kind of become a joke around here. I just moved to Alton, Illinois, in June, and everyone I meet, like somehow my reputation precedes me, because I already had some Alton friends that were here, and everybody's like, "Hey, Joel's coming to town." really pretty funny. But all these dudes that I run into, they're like, "Oh, you're Joel from the band Joel," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's me," you know. And so it's kind of fun. Really, I just kind of decided that whenever I started doing all this, I wasn't even sure that I was ever going to play shows or do anything. I just wanted to release the four songs that you have on the EP. I thought that was the only thing that was ever going to happen. I wasn't really planning on doing a whole band thing initially. That idea kind of started forming after the EP was done, but the only people that are on the EP are me and the drummer. So I recorded everything except drums. And so we did the whole thing in 6 days.
Wow.
So like from starting drum tracking to mixing and mastering, done and released in 6 days. And so it was kind of like an experiment in like, what would it look like for me to record an album without second guessing myself at all and just make every decision and not go, oh, does that sound good or not sound good? I'm just going to record it and see what happens. So that was kind of the result of that. But then the band's name, Joel, came because I was like, I don't know what to call this. It's just me. I'll just call it Joel, you know? And then when the band came along, it was like, okay, we're still just Joel. And, you know, the band is kind of it has a set roster, but it also has a rotating roster. Like, there are 5 guys that primarily play in the band, but our whole mantra with the band is no stakes. There's no stakes. We don't put any pressure on it. So, like, you know, being dads and, you know, husbands, and we've got responsibilities and things like that. It's like, hey, if a show comes up and we say, hey, I think we want to do this show, and, you know, 1 or 2 of the guys can't do it, we either say, okay, we just won't do the show, or I say, hey, do you mind if I get some of the fill-in guys to play, and if we still do this? And if they say no, then we don't. And if they say yes, then we do. And so there have been a couple of shows that I've turned down because my main guys couldn't do it. And then there have been a couple of shows where my main guys were like, hey, you shouldn't miss this show. So, you know, call some guys and get fill-ins for us. But yeah, it still remained Joel. And if you know anything about the Hebrew or, you know, whatever, it means the I am is God.
Yep.
So,
well, if you notice,
yeah.
when I write it out online, I always, like, when I'm referring to it just as the music, I all caps all the way across, JOEL, kind of how it is when you wrote to me the first time.
Yeah. Well, that is how, I mean, I write it in all caps because that's what it means to me. It's not going to mean that to everybody else because they don't know that. Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't get on stage and like talk very philosophically about God or anything like that. I very briefly make some comments, but not really too direct about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And but for me, that's what it means, and most other people don't mean that, or most other people don't know that it means Yahweh is God or the I am is God, right?
Right.
That it's kind of just for me.
Yeah.
So, and you know, I'm always happy to share my faith with people whenever I'm asked about it, but I kind of don't really believe in like proselytizing or, you know, the kind of like shove it down your throat witnessing that I was taught as a kid and a teenager, you know. It's like, hey, my life has like dramatically changed because of this thing, and if you like or like are curious about these kinds of things, I will talk to you about spiritually what's happening in my life, but I'm not gonna stand up and like wave the scriptures around at people. I wait for it to happen naturally. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's really kind of where the name comes from. I wasn't really planning on even saying all of that on the podcast because it feels a little overt. It like if you understood my background, and I kind of have some religious trauma, and you know, I said I used to be in ministry, I'm not anymore. And you know, there's a piece of me that feels like I followed Jesus straight out of the church. And I kind of went into the wilderness for a while because that's where he is. Mm-hmm. And you know, I'm a bit of a hippie, and so it doesn't look conventional to most people that sit in a pew on Sunday mornings. And so I don't talk about it very much, but it does, all of those things inform the way that I write these songs, and what I'm writing about. So
now the last song on the album, now we got I Am the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
I don't think I've listened to that one yet, but I need to. What's with the title? I think it's just kind of cool, and I guess it's a little bit hilarious to me with the title. So I don't know if this song's got some comedy in it, but I'm curious about that one.
No, it's so I said I don't really like preach or like say much from the stage.
Mm-hmm.
When we play this song, this is what I say to people, and this is really what the song is about. And this is about as close as I get to saying, like, hey, God loves you no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the Loch Ness Monster. You're the Loch Ness Monster. We're all the Loch Ness Monster. And what I mean by that is, like, we're all pretty fantastic animals, like pretty fantastic creatures. Like, if you got a really good look at the Loch Ness Monster, if it's real, right? Like,
right.
If Nessie is a real animal, that's freaking cool, right? Like,
it is, yeah.
I want to see it. Everyone wants to see it. Like, come on, Nessie, show yourself to us. Like, we want to know what you're like for real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all of us, right? Like, I grew up with this and you may or may not agree. Like, I know that, like, with religious tie-in stuff like that, people fall into denominational line stuff and it gets a little murky. So you may not agree with me on this, but this is my take on it. I was brought up being told I'm kind of a piece of crap. I'm a totally depraved, awful, evil human,
mm-hmm.
apart from Jesus, right? And my point is, none of us are apart from Jesus. Like, God never said we're not good. He just said we fall short, right? Like, the last thing that God said after he created humans was, you're good. And the first thing we did was go, yeah, but I'm not, like, please tell me what's right and wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's why we ate the fruit of, or ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's the rules that, like, make me feel ashamed of myself, right?
Right.
Like, the knowledge of knowing right from wrong or good from evil then puts shame upon me and makes me feel like I'm not good. But God never said that. Even in the curse, like, when the curse takes place, this is why I don't believe that the garden story is, I don't think it's literal. I think it's myth about humanity. I don't really fully understand the origins of the human species, but I don't think that negates who God is. But we're all these, like, really fantastic creatures that were made by, like, the thing that holds the entire freaking universe together. That's really cool.
Oh yeah.
So stop pretending to be something that you're not, and just be who you are. And people will accept you or they won't, but at least you're true to who God made you to be, or who you really are inside, right? And when we try to do battle with the real version of us in order to create some version of us that we think people will like, we actually end up, like, fragmenting ourselves and turning ourselves into something ugly,
mm-hmm.
right? And that's like the monster that we're scared of. I'm scared of this, like, evil version of me, when really there's not an evil version of me. There's evil out there in the world that corrupts me if I let it.
Yeah.
But I'm not an evil person. I'm actually one with the Almighty. And he makes it so through Christ, right? And so that's what the Loch Ness Monster is about.
Awesome.
And so I'm out in these bars and nightclubs, hanging out, smoking weed with dudes, and they don't even know that I'm, like, preaching the gospel to them, like, like they're getting a dose of, like, hey, like, God really does love you. Because you know how I know that? Because I love you, and, so, it's just kind of, it's really been intentionally trying to counteract what our environment has become over the last several years. We've become more polarized. We've become more dualistic. We've become everyone. It's us versus them. And man, that's just not, like, the only way that we're going to get rid of our enemies is by loving them and turning them into our neighbors and our friends.
Exactly.
Like, we can't fight fire with fire. It doesn't work. Right. We got to quench that with water. And so that's what that song's about. And there's a lot more packed in there than what people really maybe perceive in the, 4 minutes long that the song is. But that's the energy that's going out every time I play that song.
Awesome.
And I've seen it. I've seen people latch onto it. I've seen people acknowledge the Christ, and it's pretty cool. Like, in like a totally different way than I would have ever expected going to church my whole life. I'm seeing things happen in a totally different way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of keeps me connected to the paranormal world, is because all these people are searching for something that means more, that gives life meaning. If we're able to find these things, maybe we understand more about ourselves, or maybe we understand more about the universe, or we understand more about who God is, and so those kinds of things kind of keep me tied into this subject matter, and it's fun to use your imagination too, man. Like, at the end of the day, I can be super heavy and spiritual about it, and sometimes that overwhelms me, and I actually hit these existential crisis moments.
Yeah, I've been there.
And then I go, oh, I should just have fun instead for a little while. And so I turn off the overthinking and the deep thought, and I go, I'm just having fun using my imagination. These creature stories are fun and they're cool, and it's a good time to talk with people about them and go, what do you think about that? I don't know what I think. What do you think?
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's I am the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
Cool.
Looking at what time it is, actually, one thing I was thinking is, that the closing song, of course, I'm sorry, my mind went blank on the name.
Oh, I left this place.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We ought to do an
Yeah.
episode on that one, because John actually wants to do an episode on Travis Walton. And
oh yeah, dude, I would love to come on for that. Yeah. That one's a really compelling story, right? Yeah, we won't get into it too much. We'll just a little teaser. Like, the polygraph test component of that story is what really intrigued me, if you guys know what I'm referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and that kind of leaned back into the same idea from Point Pleasant, and that is are these people really actually seeing what they're seeing, or are they is it a mental thing? Is it you know what I mean? A person goes missing for 5 days and then shows back up and says they've been abducted by aliens, but the only evidence we have is they're, these hypnotherapists pulling these stories out of them, right?
Right.
So it's a little suspect, but it's also very compelling that the polygraph tests were passed. So I'll just leave it there. I would love to talk to you guys about that story, but that's really, that's the idea behind. I know originally you said you thought I Left This Place was about a ghost.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was death and they were going to heaven or something.
Yeah, no, it's the Travis Walton story. It's kind of like this idea, I'm watching the fields grow smaller under my feet as I'm being pulled up into this ship. What is happening? And so, yeah, it's interesting. How some of those songs, I feel they just kind of happened. I wasn't really sitting down with pen and paper and going, what rhymes with this? Okay, now I need a line that says this. It was just I would have these moments where I'd go, oh, I have this idea, and I would just write it down on a piece of paper,
mm-hmm.
and then put it away and go, okay, I'm going to come back to that later. And then I'd have another idea totally separate, write that one down. And then it was kind of putting this puzzle together and then going, okay, now I need a guitar riff. And so the hardest part of writing that song was the guitar stuff, because the lyrics just kind of came out of nowhere. It's almost like I found them,
Nice.
There's another band, one of my favorite bands is called Emery. They're from South Carolina and moved out to Seattle back in the early 2000s. They're heavy bands, but they talk about their songwriting process in that way. It's almost like I'm finding the songs, and I'm dude, I know exactly what that means. I don't know that a lot of people may understand that, but if you do any kind of creative writing, sometimes it's oh, where did that even come from? And if you don't capture it, like either write it down or voice memo like right away, like it stands to like be lost, and like someone else might find it instead. You know what I mean?
Right.
And not to be like super woo woo or whatever, but like sometimes it does feel like the universe is just kind of going like ping, like hit you with like an idea. And it's like, hey, here's an idea. If you're interested, you can have it. And if I don't get to it in time or like voice memo it or write it down, it's like, okay, sorry, you missed out on this one. I'm going to give it to someone else instead. Because I'll find like ideas that I didn't proceed with. I'll hear somewhere else, like in some other form, maybe not even in a song, but I'm like, oh, I had that idea for a song a few years ago, but I never wrote that song. I just had the idea and then never pursued it. And then I'm reading a short story and someone else is like making the same kind of analogy or, metaphor about humanity versus the paranormal. And I'm like, dude, and then I can't say that's my idea. I'm like, oh, that's that idea that showed up in my brain all of a sudden. I don't even know if it belongs to me,
Right.
So it's just, man, it's a lot of fun, dude. I love all this stuff. I'm really appreciative of the fact that you guys humored me and decided to use my music on the podcast and would want to have me on to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, man.
It's awesome music.
Yeah, I sent John right after you contacted me. I sent John your link, and he listened, and I was like, "Man, that's some good stuff." And then as I listened, I was like, "I like that one for the front, and I like that one for the end." And he's like, "I agree, those will work."
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to clip them down. We'd have went really long on them if I'd have kept them long.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we're getting ready to do some new stuff too, so you guys can kind of be on the lookout for that. I guess we're kind of running down on time, so if you guys got any more, I'd love to answer any more questions, and I'll try to be a little bit less long-winded.
Yeah, I just would like to get I'll let John, if John's got any questions, he can ask away.
Yeah, we definitely would love to talk about the whole Travis Walton and the abduction, and like to me, that is the most, the word I'm trying to find.
It's compelling,
intriguing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's intriguing and compelling because it's like the evidence is hard to argue. I mean, there are things that you could go, okay, I could maybe explain this away. But there are other things that you're like, oh, I don't really know what to do with that.
Right.
Like the polygraph.
It's very fascinating. Yes.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the fact that, how he's still alive today and his story still has not changed.
Right.
It's go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The idea that, all his buddies were basically going to be on the hook for murder.
Right.
You would think that if these guys were lying, someone would be like, dude, I'm not going to jail for this crap. Like, let's just come clean and tell them we were pulling a hoax, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
one
that
of
kind of stuff
came clean to get a light.
Right. It doesn't make sense. And yet all of them passed polygraph tests, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not necessarily even saying that the alien stuff is real because the jury's out. I haven't seen it, right? But what I can tell you is these guys really believe that they saw something.
Yeah.
They saw something. Yeah. So we can leave it there. That's your listeners' teaser for when we actually have a long conversation about it. That's a good story.
Yeah,
it's a really good story.
I definitely want to do
awesome get him on there.
Now, when is I know you said there's going to be basically a re-release of the album, right? A better, well, I wouldn't say better version because I like the way it is. Remastered edition, I guess.
Well, it's going to be a full length. So the Diversions EP is just 4 songs,
right.
And those were the first 4 that kind of came to me. And like I was saying earlier, we blitzed the recording of that. And it was just me and my drummer.
Right.
And I just said, hey, I just want to record these songs. I need you to play drums on these songs. And we, at the time, didn't have any intention of turning it into anything more than that. It was just going to be a recording. And so because we did the blitz in 6 days, and it was, like I said, it was an experiment in, as a recording engineer, can I do this without making any second guesses about my decisions,
right,
and just see how it sounds, right? Instead of analyzing everything and really spending hours or days mixing, it was like 15 minutes a song on mixing.
wow,
Like I didn't spend any more time than that. It was like, I know the things that I need to do to kind of like clear the mix up and get it ready. I'm not trying to make a polished radio version of anything. I just want to put it out.
right.
And so I feel like it was pretty successful. I'm still happy with the recordings.
Yeah, they sound great.
Since I've been playing with this band, the songs have changed a little bit. So the versions that you're going to hear won't just be remastered or re-recorded.
Is it like
it's going to be No. I mean, it's still the same. It's still the same. It's kind of still the same vibe, but it's a lot more fleshed out because these other guys who are just incredible musicians, my brother-in-law, Owen, one of my ex-coworkers, Greg, my best friend from the time we were 3 years old, Ryan, plays bass, and then our drummer, whose name is also Ryan. What the five of us do together live, it hasn't been captured. And so I'm like, dude, these songs deserve to kind of be shown the way that they've grown.
Right.
And so we're re-recording those 4, but then we're also adding like 6 new songs. And so a handful of those are already kind of in the works, in that kind of thing. And I'll maybe even share some sneak previews with you guys at some point once they're a little further along, because we kind of demo things as we go and kind of get ideas about stuff.
We may need to add it, replace it.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll see how it turns out. My guitar player, Greg, is a really good audio engineer, and so he's actually going to engineer this album instead of me doing it myself. And so I'm excited about the way that the songs are going to kind of come around sounding fresh and new. And then obviously new material is always fun and exciting, something new for people to hear. So yeah, that we've already kind of started on that. We did some drum tracking in August on the original 4 songs. We haven't started recording the new ones yet, but you may or may not. I try not to put dates on stuff because, like I said earlier, our whole thing is no stakes, right? Like we don't want to put high pressure on anything. So we have no release date. We just have an object goal in mind of what we want to do, and if we push towards that, I think we'll get it done fairly quickly. But so you may see a single or 2 this fall into the winter. The album will probably be a springtime release.
One quick question,
because we don't want to rush it. So, yeah.
Before we let you go, are these new songs pretty much paranormal related as well?
Yeah, the whole album will be, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2. And even those, well, even my point is, even with those 1 or 2, it's still kind of like a sidestep from the paranormal. It personally, for me, it means something to me. Like, I'll go ahead and say one of them, because most of the people that have seen me play live know that we do this song, but we cover "Losing My Religion" by REM.
Yeah.
We basically play it the way that they play it, just with more instruments. So it's not like a total reimagining of it, but it's a little bit of a heavier, grungier version of "Losing My Religion." And part of that has to do with, like, that's not even original song by me, and we're going to obviously have to pay licensing for that. But I think we're going to record that song and then one other that kind of flirt around the same subject material, and that has to do with like the idea of like my faith and spirituality kind of changing over the years as I've
be honest with you,
explored some of these ideas.
I'm a metalhead, so
yeah.
I probably like your version better than the original.
Well, it's not going to be super heavy, so like, don't get your hopes up. We're not going to be screaming or anything. Although,
original, so.
yeah, well, yeah, a little bit. Although I should say the drummer and my brother-in-law Owen and I did used to be in a screamo band together, and I screamed quite a bit. But we grew out of that, man. You get into your late 30s and you're like, I can't do that anymore, you know.
You got to save your vocal
I know
cords.
that there's a lot of guys that are older than me that are still doing it, but man, they do it way.
I don't see how Metallica still does what they're doing at 60.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. I mean, whether or not you're even a Metallica fan, you can't argue with the fact that it's not impressive that those guys still do what they do.
Years old, still play battery and shit like that.
Yeah. So,
but
yeah, I'm excited about it. I hope that you guys will like it. But yeah, it will be primarily paranormal, cryptids, conspiracy stuff, that kind of thing. So
yeah, I'd love to talk to you about cryptids too, because that's one subject I don't know a whole lot about.
Yeah,
I'm more of a demonic, spiritual, like that. That's most of my experience. Cryptids, I have like zero experience.
Yeah, well, that's I'm way more into that than I am into the demonic and spiritual. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that has to do kind of. Oh, Black-Eyed Children is a good.
Cryptid or spiritual?
They're a legend, more like an urban legend.
I want to say that that's more of an urban legend. And if you could give me any kind of like convincing evidence of them, it sounds to me more like a. It's hard to say this stuff without going down sounding like a
Skinwalker.
No, well, it sounded like you're a lizard person, conspiracy theorist or whatever. But those encounters just sound to me almost like it's similar to the Men in Black. Like how when people say they encounter the Men in Black and they're like act weird, like they don't know like how to use a straw. Or that kind of stuff. It's the Black-Eyed Kids are similar, but they also have this like vampiric thing about them too, where it's like they have to ask you to come in, and when you tell them no, they like freak out and get crazy. So that stuff's weird, and I guess I'll just put it out there. You can expect one of those on the new album.
Awesome.
So that's and then there's another phenomena called the Mirrored Men. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Monsters Among Us podcast. Derek Hayes out of the Northwest.
I'll check them out.
But the Mirrored Men, it's these three figures. It's very similar to the Men in Black stuff. It's almost like a combination of Men in Black and Black-Eyed Children. And so we actually have a song about that we've actually been playing. We've been playing that song live at shows for the past few months. And it goes over pretty well. It's a good one. So we're excited to record that one soon.
So you have a YouTube for Joel?
I do, but the only thing that's on there right now is the EP. Yeah. So it's just 4 videos and it's just the album cover with the audio. But you guys, I mean, if your listeners want to subscribe to that, all of my tags on all social media are going to be /listen to Joel. That's it. So my YouTube is youtube.com/listen to Joel. My Facebook is facebook.com/listen to Joel. I just actually converted my old personal Instagram that I hadn't used in like 4 years into a professional musician account. And so that Instagram tag is @listen to Joel.
Nice.
So yeah, you can find my stuff there. And there will be videos coming because I've been toying around with the idea of kind of doing a little bit of, and your listeners get a advanced viewing of this by listening to all of these stories today. But I'm going to do some videos and kind of tell some of these stories a little bit more succinctly. And then I'm also going to share through potentially a Patreon page or something like that. I haven't even decided yet, but like the idea of like my voice memos and the little notes that I scribble down, those ideas that I was talking about earlier that aren't my ideas that I just write down, just sharing like those scrapbooks of things and kind of putting that somewhere where people that are interested enough can go and read it, look at it, listen to it, watch it, whatever.
That's cool.
What is your YouTube name again? I'm gonna subscribe right now.
Yeah, all of my social media, including YouTube, is just youtube.com/listen to Joel. So everything is /listen to Joel. Listen to Joel. Yeah. Spelled out. No, not the number 2. I'm not hip enough or in a hip hop group or whatever. Not taking it to the streets. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know you got to get ready for a gig. So,
Yeah, we got a show in a couple of weeks, so we're gonna. Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed the stories and.
Oh yeah, man.
And appreciate you guys, supporting the music and listening and telling people about it.
Yeah, man. We'll definitely have to have you on about again. Talk like maybe John, instead of getting Justin, we can have him talk about the Black Eyed Children with us.
Yeah, anything about that, about the Walton case, everything,
Yeah, all that stuff, man.
Well, I'd be happy to. I mean, if you guys have another friend who's an investigator or someone that is, knows about these kinds of things, but you maybe think, hey, let's get Joel on and see if he's got any thoughts about this kind of thing. I would be happy to be on a show with another person if you guys want, whatever.
Awesome.
It's fine with me. So.
All right, well, we're going to let you go because I know you got band practice. So thank you for coming on,
yeah,
Joel.
Man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks to your listeners for sticking around and listening to me ramble for an hour.
All right, guys, hang on in there. We got
great, man.
Hang on in there, guys. We got our ad for Coffee Brand Coffee, and then that'll be followed by, of course, the closeout of I Left This Place. So thank you, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I'll talk to y'all guys later. Are you ready to embark on a journey into the paranormal world of flavor? Join me and John as we uncover the mysteries of taste with our otherworldly sponsor, Coffee Brand Coffee. Coffee Brand Coffee serves those who've had enough of the illusions and seek the true essence of freshly roasted coffee. No gimmicks, just pure, hauntingly good brews. Did you know that their fulfillment and roasting facilities are right here in the United States? That's right. The magic happens right here on home soil. They have 12 bewitching coffee blends from all corners of the world, 12 new organic loose leaf teas, 3 heavenly hot cocoa flavors, my favorite. There's something that will awaken even the sleepiest spirits. And here's the secret to their unparalleled flavor. Every batch is hand roasted to order. That's right. There's no dusty shelves. There's no forgotten corners where, something might have fell back there. No. It goes straight from the roasters right to your doorstep, ensuring each cup is a potion of perfection. Remember, timing is crucial because you see, coffee, it loses its spirit in about 7 to 10 days after you roast it. But don't fear, because you see, Coffee Brand Coffee, it roasts daily, preserving every ounce of its enchanting essence. And don't just take our word for it, brothers and sisters. No. There are nearly 4,000 verified customer reviews. Go over there and look at them, because you'll see that the majority of them are perfect. 5 out of 5. That's right. Let the voices of our spectral patrons guide you to the sip of something that's extraordinary. From farm to cup, Coffee Brand Coffee, it's on a quest for excellence. You see, they seek out the finest and most sustainably sourced beans. They forge direct trade relationships with growers all across the globe. What this does is this ensures that not only unparalleled taste, but also a future where coffee, it thrives in harmony with the earth. So, dear listeners, if you're seeking to brew, a cup of coffee that just transcends the ordinary, I want you to visit Coffee Brand Coffee. Use our referral link that's at the bottom underneath this video or podcast, wherever you're at, and get yourself an otherworldly experience. And remember, their subscription purchases are already 10% off. That's right. But you see, because you support us, it shines through when you use our link. You can unearth the secrets of flavor with Coffee Brand Coffee. You can taste the paranormal, one cup at a time. Cheers to a world of bewitching blends. And if you don't want to use the link below, we have our own little code, EVP Pod. Go on over and give them a look, guys. And thank you always for your support.
Has it been since I left this place?